Welcome, everybody. I hope you're having a great Saturday night. I was on the ABL broadcast a little earlier. Have the screen grab for it up. Also, a new article I've started writing for the Hard News Network, contributing for them. Please look at the link below concerning the release the memo issue and how the FBI has already become so compromised that it's basically the damage is irreparable. So please check out my blog post below. It's one of the first articles after the ones that are related to this stream. So I'll tell you which one it is in a second. It is, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fifth link is my new article. So I encourage you to go and see it. Now, a lot of the topics I'm going to talk about today are related to the quote unquote Holocaust Remembrance Day. Now, let me be clear, I'm not diminishing the importance of the Holocaust in the history of the world, but I have this perception that it's become simply used as a political football by a lot of different sides. Now, people might think that I'm talking about the Jewish community, but not only the Jewish community. Now, obviously, there are people in the Jewish community, I think, that do improperly talk about it, both to advance political agendas that have nothing to do with the Holocaust. For example, there's people active in the gay rights movement. There's people active in all these various other, peripheral movements that have nothing to do with it. People marching for all sorts of causes. Look, I think that when you have a tragedy that occurred in history, when you politicize it, when you turn it into a political football, that's what diminishes its importance. And if you were to ask me what should be the proper message of this date, which, to be honest with you, I didn't know about it until I logged on this afternoon, or this evening rather, and looked up. I think I looked around 7:30. I saw like a bunch of hashtags. I was like, "What is this about?" And apparently, yeah, there's like at least two of these days. One of them is the American date. The other one is I think the Israeli holiday, which not most people don't know about, but that's usually in the late spring. And I have to say, the real message should be, if you really want to talk about never again, they always talk about never again. Well, never again was talking about how the people would never be victimized anymore, meaning the Jewish people. But it should probably be everybody. We should probably oppose all genocides anywhere and everywhere, and we should define what genocides are. Okay, now let me see here. I have Angel Muniz here. Thank you for logging on, but I'm gonna try not to be on the chat too much. But thanks, Angel, for tuning in. Look, there's a real problem when you take all sorts of tragedies of history and you turn them into political cannon fodder. It's the same thing that is used with regards to slavery. There's nothing you can do to correct the ills of slavery from the past. The people who were most affected by slavery died generations ago. Most of the people that were affected by the Holocaust have really, I mean, I'm sorry to say that there are a few people, there are survivors left. Okay, so I'm perfectly willing to say that there's people left who were affected by it. But the real message, in my opinion, should be that all genocides should be prevented as well as possible. And the question now is, how do you do it? And we're going to have to think about it. You can't just invade every country that's at war by saying that, well, they're perpetrating a genocide. And even in some cases they are. But there's always an issue when you intervene overseas and see ways to entangle yourselves in the internal affairs of a foreign country. And there's a lot of people who will, unfortunately, use the memory of people who died in the name of racial purity. For example, the Anne Frank, world famous for her diary, obviously published years later by her dad after the Holocaust. Now, what happened last year was that an organization that calls itself the Anne Frank Center for Mutual Respect actually used her memory in order to do what? To participate in the hashtag resistance. And it was done through this gay rights lawyer. Just a second, I'll pull up the story. His name was Stephen Goldstein. And I thought this was the biggest load of shit I'd ever seen. This guy, don't use the ideas and the issues of somebody who's been dead for over 70 years now in order to promote your personal opinions. So how about you call it the Steve Goldstein Center and leave her the fuck alone. She died over 70 years ago. This was somebody who wasn't even adult age. You don't know what her opinions would have been on anything that's going on now. You don't know anything about this. I mean, you can only go according to the thoughts and ideas talked about in her book. And a lot of them had nothing to do with the Holocaust itself. It had to do with hiding away in a home, a sanctuary center. Sanctuary from what? Sanctuary from extermination. It wasn't sanctuary. A lot of people want to make the connection between sanctuary cities of the past, of today, and what happened in the past with people stowing, Jews in the Holocaust or stowing other people in other genocides. It's not really the same thing. The sanctuary cities are used by people who have violated the law knowingly by coming to this country, and they just don't want to face the penalty, and the penalty would be to go back to their country. That's not the same thing. I'm sorry. It might not be comfortable to talk about. You might oppose the repatriation of those people to their countries of origin, but it's not the same thing as Anne Frank. And for people to use that memory, and I'll show you this. This is really, to me, inexcusable that somebody like this uses the memory of somebody who died that has nothing to do with what she's talking about. It says the firebrand executive of the Anne Frank Center for Mutual Respect, which came to prominence this year. So this article is from September. Through social media attacks on President Trump, has abruptly stepped down from the organization to become a rabbi. I'd like to say before I keep reading that it's it's not like a full-on rabbi. It's like a rabbi for Reform Judaism, which, my personal opinion is that that's not really a religion. They don't have much theology to their religion, and people will attack me for it. But look, I don't really. I've known some of them, and it just doesn't seem like an actual religion with real beliefs, except for social justice beliefs, which again, that's not a religion, with all due respect. Stephen's departure from the center came at Stephen's request so that he could. Well, let me fix that. Okay, sorry, I'm making this really disjointed. It's a religion, but it's actually a religion without the role of God. And for me, that's not really the point, and I'm not really going to pretend that I support it, or that in fact, I don't really respect it. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. I don't respect their system because it just seems like a really diluted belief system that takes everything that's important out of the original idea. So they talk about how he left the organization, and Goldstein informed the board that he would be leaving to attend rabbinical school only a few weeks ago. On Twitter, the organization said September 8th that they had learned a week earlier that he would be enrolling in a rabbinical school. And then look what he says. He started classes Monday at the Academy for Jewish Religion, a little-known rabbinical seminary in Yonkers, New York. He says, helping to lead the resistance takes a toll. This has been grueling. At some point, you ask yourself, can I have my life back? Nobody forced him to do this, okay? Now, I have a job that I do full time. I don't drag that job into my politics, okay? I don't say anything. In fact, I make a conscious effort not to talk to you about what type of work I do, or who I work with, or mention anybody's names, or mention the name of the organization that I work for, which has nothing to do with politics. It's a completely non-political sector. I don't mix my workplace with my politics. In fact, when I'm at work, I don't really talk about what I do on this channel, and I think it's better, and I think it's more healthy. And what this guy did is ridiculous. He says, Goldstein is still listed as executive director on the group's website. After his story was first published, Goldstein spoke with a foreword describing how he had been run down by his time leading the organization. I was simply exhausted. He said, I feel the weight of the world off my shoulders because I was working from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. twittering because Donald Trump was twittering. That's not a job. Twittering about somebody. Look, when you head an organization, a nonprofit that's supposed to be about about you know talking about the memory of this one person. No, that has nothing to do with tweeting the president of the United States from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. Founded in 1959, the Anne Frank Center was relatively unknown, even within the Jewish community, until late 2016, when it began issuing full-throated denunciations of the Trump administration. It drew particular attention in April with its calls for former White House spokesman Sean Spicer's firing, accusing him of Holocaust denial over his comments on Syrian poison gas attacks on civilians. Goldstein would previously led a New Jersey gay rights group he had founded called Garden State Equality, joined the organization in June 2016. According to an April 2017 report in The Atlantic, Goldstein's hiring was part of an effort to reinvent the sleepy group, which closed its small museum and turned over its entire staff after Goldstein arrived. Since then, the group's public statements have become something of a Trump-era phenomenon. Its tweets are regularly favorited and retweeted thousands of times, and its language strays far from the stead tones favored by most Jewish communal organizations. The group has been criticized under Goldstein for using Anne Frank's name in the service of partisan politics. Well, why do you think? I mean, she died. She wasn't an American, okay? How can you assume anything about what Anne Frank would have done if she had lived? She died over 70 years ago, and you're using her name in order to promote what you think. That's like me using the name of Hank Aaron's still alive, but Jackie Robinson in order to promote Colin Kaepernick. Well, I guess somebody does that. People still do that. It's ridiculous. There's a difference between having your own belief system, promoting it with social media, and then or using somebody else who's dead in order to promote it. It's wrong. And I personally, I think that it's really it's an embarrassment. Goldstein said his job at the Anne Frank Center had been a source of growing stress. Getting attacks from Donald Trump supporters, it got to me. He said there were death threats. Some of them I took seriously. Well, you didn't have to mix your personal opinions with the work of the Anne Frank Center. The Anne Frank Center is not a political organization. It should have been an organization dedicated to studying the life of Anne Frank. He said that he, being a rabbi, was a lifelong dream, and that he had previously studied at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Seminary in Philadelphia. He said, I turned 55 this year. He said, I desperately want to be a rabbi. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Goldstein said that he had considered studying part-time while continuing his role at the Anne Frank Center, but decided against it. In the end, my love for Torah won out. The other day I was in class studying the book of Exodus, and I felt so at peace. He does not know who will succeed him at the Anne Frank Center, but that he will continue to help the organization raise money. Tonight, I'm seeing a concert for the first time. He said, I'm ecstatic, to be honest with you. In public posts on his personal Facebook page in recent days, Goldstein has described a period of personal reflection. I confess I'm still in disbelief, he wrote on September 12th. I've changed my life a lot over the past several weeks. So there you have it. I'm gonna check in if any of you guys have any questions so far. I'm not really gonna be so focused on the chat today. Here we go. Pinochet and Catherine, welcome. It took care of the children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors when I worked on a psych unit. It's not over. It's being passed generation to generation like a genetic stream. Well, I have to disagree. I'm with all due respect. Pinochet has a strange story. Look, I am fine with people, commemorating the Holocaust. Okay, absolutely, because I have ancestors who were in it, and I think it should be commemorated. That's not the point. And I'm against people who deny the Holocaust, but I'm also against speech codes that say that you can't publish things that are, even if they're outright they're outright falsehoods. I'm a freedom of speech absolutist. I think that when you prohibit people from talking about things that they find to be important, and that they hold out to be their ideas, well, that doesn't really change their minds. It actually it creates some sort of chic quality to it that has people thinking, well, we're the rebels, we're the ones that are, we're the resistance, quote unquote, we're the ones who are fighting against the mainstream. And that's what a lot of these, quote unquote far right movements have been doing in Europe, especially, where they have banned in some countries Holocaust denial. It's created chic movements of people that are dedicated to upsetting the status quo, and those people are gaining more power because of repression of free speech. So, in my opinion, again, this is just me. You guys are free to disagree. I know Catherine disagrees, but as the grandson of two Holocaust survivors on my dad's side, you know, I think that what they did was they rebuilt their lives. I didn't know them that well. Pinochet says he has more strange stories. I didn't know them that well because I didn't live in, they both lived in Israel. I didn't live there. I only met them a couple times, and I didn't speak the same language as them. So I did meet a number of other ones that told their stories that were Holocaust survivors. But in the grand scheme of things, in order to prevent this from ever happening again, because if you're talking about never again, you have to emphasize around the world personal freedom, civil liberties, the right of people to self-defense, the dismantling of the surveillance state. Look, how did the Holocaust happen? You had these people, the National Socialists, that they grabbed as much power as possible. They weren't quite as comprehensive as the communists because they allowed private industry to continue, but they sort of controlled it from the outside, and they guided that sort of top-down hierarchy to eliminate all the people that they considered undesirables. Some of those people were Jews. Some of those people were gypsies. Some of those people were, their own communist party, because they were rivals. And then there were all these other people that were intellectuals, like liberal intellectuals and things like that. They would eliminate them too. So the idea that this has to be some sort of tribal issue or some sort of global agenda, that we can only talk about the Holocaust in terms of preventing this, never again, because of this person or that person calling this person the new Hitler, and we're talking about Trump for example, but some people have called Obama Hitler. I wouldn't do that. That's absolutely not the answer. The answer to preventing another Holocaust is emphasizing worldwide, whether it's in China, whether it's in Russia, even whether it's in some of these African states like South Africa and Zimbabwe and Ethiopia. You have to emphasize that we believe in civil liberties. We believe that people have the right to, the pursuit of happiness, and involved in that is the idea that they should have freedom of expression. Yeah, that is a pretty strange story, Pinochet, and I'm not going to mention it on air, but thank you for sharing. But, geez, what a way to distract. Thanks, buddy. Look, the Jewish people, yeah, there have been many tragedies in our history. There have been many things that we can emphasize that are positive in our history, but because of the memory of the Holocaust, a lot of that stuff gets shoved to the side. And I think that it would behoove us to emphasize more of the positive things, the theology of Judaism, the belief in one God, the belief in, the permeation of God throughout the world, the belief that, the belief in the Torah and the codification of our laws. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm talking only to people who believe in it, but there's a lot of people who talk about this type of stuff, the Anne Frank Center type of stuff, the Anne Frank Center type of stuff, not Anne Frank, that they have very little consciousness of what that's about. They have very little idea. I mean, they might have not even opened up, any of the books of the Torah and read them. And I'm talking about, the biblical books. A lot of them have never done it. They've never tried, and they never will. Unless a new emphasis is put on that. Now I go to a synagogue where the emphasis is put on that, and we do read about it and we speak about those themes. And when you take away this emphasis on the worst tragedies in our history, that, in my opinion, is the true never again. It's about creating, a new consciousness. The idea. I mean, some of these people, they're called Hasidim, and what they believe in is that, by shining one small light, you can disperse a lot of darkness, because darkness is the absence of life. Oh man, that you two don't fight in the chat. I'm gonna minimize the chat. Sorry. Um, so look, I think that there's certainly room to talk about it. I do, I know people who still have parents, or that, their parents might have passed away, that they were in the Holocaust, and it's a legitimate topic to discuss, but it's not a topic that should take up all of our efforts and time. It's a topic that should be, it should be maintained only to talk about things that were factual events. But when you overemphasize it, when you do day after day, I've had arguments with people over this, that, why do we only have to focus on this? We have, several books, these epic journeys. Some of them were pretty negative too. The book of Jeremiah, which, I actually have the Hebrew version here. The book of Jeremiah, it's one of my favorite books. I talk a lot about these Clinton books, but this, honestly, this was a book that was very meaningful for me. I read it last year. But it's not a happy book. It's a pretty tragic book. It's about the destruction of the temple and the expulsion of the Israelites from the land of Israel, land of Canaan, land of Israel. And it was, the language he uses there, and this doom that he feels, that to me was really an eye opener. And you talked about a lot of grotesque. There were a lot of grotesque scenes of torture and death that were suffered by those people, over 2,000 years ago. I think that's just as important, if not more important than only talking about the Holocaust. And of course, if you read the book, it's relevant to all nations, not only to the Jews, because he talks about the devastation subsequently after the conquest of Jerusalem, of Egypt, of Moab, of Edom, of all these other nations. That's why, I think that there's certain things in the Bible I don't know why all people read it, because they're not necessarily um, they don't really make sense in context for people that don't believe in Judaism. But there's certain parts of the Bible I think that have a universal sort of appeal, and I think that's one of them. So that's about it for that as a topic on its own. Um, so yeah, I think we do need a different approach to talking about the Holocaust, which would be different from the way Germany's Angela Merkel. I'll show you this article. It's a real chuckle factory here. Germany's Merkel warns of increased anti-Semitism on Holocaust Remembrance Day. The German chancellor called it inconceivable that Jewish institutions still need police protection. Angela Merkel said that Germany's new government needs an anti-Semitism commissioner. So you see her, sour face, the sour face of an idiot who screwed her own country. And this is my next section on this. But the part of Holocaust remembrance, I believe, is letting go of the fact that we have other countries solve our problems. Now, I have friends from Germany. I think Germany is, there's a lot of fantastic people in Germany, and they're not called Angela Merkel. She's a moron. I think that we need to let go of the hate towards the Germans and really focus it on, promoting civil liberties around the world, like I said earlier. And Angela Merkel is the opposite of that. Angela Merkel is a censoring idiot, a bitch who lets migrants into her country to ruin her country. And she doesn't know how to solve a single friggin' problem anywhere. Look, these people who are coming into her country are the people who are causing this other problem with attacking Jewish institutions. But they're not only attacking Jewish institutions, they happen to be attacking other people who are not Jewish in Germany, such as Germans, for example. So if we talk about what's the system that God really wanted, he wanted people to do the best for their kids, for I guess their siblings and friends and whatever. They did not want, he did not want that, you would have this disgusting gas bag woman, Angela Merkel, importing, millions of people from Muslim countries to ruin Germany, which is a decent country. Now, I'm not trying to be intolerant here and say that Germany shouldn't have any immigration. I'm saying that they should have immigration to the benefit of Germany, not to the benefit of countries that suck and that don't know how to get their shit together. For example, Turkey. And, there's, all this quote unquote Syrian refugee immigration. No, these people are coming in and they're fucking up, a modern country where people, the German people, after World War II, they came a long way and they rebuilt a lot. And I think that they're owed, a lot of respect for what they did with their industries, and in many cases, they created a country that was a real success. And all this stuff about guilt about the Holocaust, I don't think. I mean, what are you supposed to do? You can't correct something that's that bad. So you have to kind of move on and do better. And this is not doing better. Fucking your own country up is not doing better. And Angela Merkel should know that by now, but she doesn't. She can't take a hint. She thinks that the more refugees you take in, the better of a person she is. She's not a better person. She's an old, washed up loser who tries to tell the rest of Europe how to mind their own house. She does it to the Greeks, who to be honest with you, don't know how to run a budget. I've been editing a video on that for a while, but I don't know when it's going to be done. She does it to the British. She does it to Spain, to all these other countries. Look, if you want Europe to be a free society, stop bitching to everybody and telling them to take more refugees in. I'm not sure what Catherine's talking about. Pinochet said, I got banned from all school buses in 7th grade for causing an 8-car pileup by throwing my seat out the window. Okay. Oh, I see what he's doing here. That's great. That's it. I'm ignoring the chat for the remainder of the. I knew he would do this because I encouraged him by making a video for him, Pinochet. So look, again, there is no such thing as support. Look, you can't correct something you've already done where you killed. I mean, there's 6 million Jews, but remember, there wasn't just Jews. There were Poles. A lot of Poles, a lot of Ukrainians were murdered. A lot of Ukrainians participated in the Holocaust too. But you don't see people blaming Ukraine for some of its people participating in the Holocaust. And honestly, they also had their own genocide perpetrated against them by the Soviet Union. And there were people involved in that will never be as famous as the Nazis. You had countries like Croatia that were involved in the Holocaust. Does anybody talk about that? No. Does it mean that we should hate Croatia? No. Does it mean that look, the Holocaust happened? The answer is to find ways for things like that not to happen again. And it shouldn't have happened in Cambodia, right? But are we talking about never again for Cambodia? We're not really talking about that, are we? The same type of thing happened in Rwanda. A lot of people have been killed in Colombia. Uh, I've had people who have been on this channel from Venezuela who say that they believe a Holocaust is happening in Venezuela. It's hard to tell what is a genocide and what is a Holocaust and what is, all these things. But it's not hard to talk about civil liberties and ensuring that the private citizen has the rights and freedoms to protect themselves from totalitarian governments that infringe on those things. So why not promote that? Why do we have to have these frauds like Angela Merkel and this Steve Goldstein from the Anne Frank Society, complete idiot, doesn't know shit about anything, who uses his organization to promote his, the beliefs of him and not of, the cause that it was originally founded for. No, I think that we have to push back against that and tell people that if you want to prevent genocides, if you want to prevent mass killings, you can't trust these large super state structures to help you. They haven't done it at all. The UN, for example, didn't do anything to prevent several genocides in the Congo. Okay, so what would have prevented those things? Well, I think that a sufficient breakup of the Congo into different countries, where some of these peoples could have their own self-determination. I think that might have helped it. Maybe I'm just putting it out there, but not UN peacekeeping forces that go there and prostitute the people. So, look, this is a very grim topic, and I know a lot of people are, obviously Pinochet is still having fun, which it's his right to. It's Saturday night, but I'm in favor of de-emphasizing this guilt culture, de-emphasizing this emphasis on controlling people, controlling people's thoughts, telling people what to think. You have people, they're Holocaust deniers. Okay, it's fucked up. Can you change their minds? Probably not. Will you change their minds by banning them? No, you're not going to. End of story. There has to be a better way to do this. And turning our attention to, fake idiots. There's Alan Dershowitz, who, is a smart person. Not going to take it away from him. Brilliant defense attorney, based on his career. And I'm not a lawyer, but I take the opinions of many people who are in the industry, the law industry, seriously. Yeah, he's a brilliant defense lawyer, but he comes out, he says, I wouldn't have campaigned for Obama if I knew about the Farrakhan pick. And this is because of this photo where you have Barack Obama, he's there smiling with Louis Farrakhan and whatever. Look, Alan Dershowitz, I think, is full of shit. This is a guy who, now let's read through this, okay? I think he's full of shit on this matter, okay? Harvard law professor and longtime Democrat Alan Dershowitz said he would not have campaigned for then Senator Barack Obama of Illinois if he knew about the future president's photo op with Louis Farrakhan. Farrakhan, leader of the Nation of Islam, is a virulent anti-Semite and anti-American, Dershowitz said on Fox and Friends. He has called Judaism a gutter religion. He is a horrible, horrible human being, he said. A photographer, Aska Mohammed, showed Fox News Tucker Carlson a 2005 picture of Obama and Farrakhan smiling together. He said that afterward, the Congressional Black Caucus contacted him and demanded to have the photo back. He said, I gave the original disc to him and in a sense swore myself to secrecy because I had quietly made a copy for myself, Mohammed said. Mohammed said that he thought the CBC was concerned a photo with Farrakhan would hurt the young senator's future political aspirations. Mohammed added that Obama had Nation of Islam followers working in his Chicago Senate office. Dershowitz said he threatened to leave the Democratic Party if Representative Keith Ellison of Minnesota, who once had connections with Farrakhan, was elected chairman instead of Tom Perez. He said, we should have nobody in public office associating with a bigot like Farrakhan, he said. So, look, I don't support Louis Farrakhan. I think I think Louis Farrakhan is full of shit, and that his religion. If you look into the Nation of Islam, it's kind of a weird religion. Now, again, freedom of religion, so people can believe whatever they want. People might think that my religion is kind of strange. It's pointless to attack people for their religion. I think Farrakhan is kind of a bizarre character. And yes, I do believe that he hates Jews, but Barack Obama appearing with Louis Farrakhan doesn't shock me at all. I think it's somewhat appropriate that he would have appeared with Louis Farrakhan because I think his actual beliefs are closer to Louis Farrakhan than he's ever admitted. And I think that a lot of Jewish liberals were in denial for years that was the case. Now, what is my problem with Louis Farrakhan? Louis Farrakhan, I think, is one of the people who was most militant about killing Malcolm X, who was, for those of you that don't know, Malcolm X was a minister in the Nation of Islam for many years, and he was trying to create an assertive civil rights movement for Black people that would talk about self-reliance and opposing authority. And I think Malcolm X was a great figure for not just Black America, but for people in general in this country, because he did reject authority, and he did talk about a lot of these issues that were not politically correct for the 1960s, which is when we're talking about. And Louis Farrakhan, because he was a hardcore follower of Elijah Muhammad, the founder of the Nation of Islam, helped to demonize Malcolm X, and I believe eventually have him killed. And I think that was one of the most tragic things for Black Americans, and he should certainly if he really had integrity, he would admit to that. And all of this stuff about him being an anti-Semite, I think is secondary to that. Those are his beliefs. We're not going to change him. Maybe he has some reasons for them. I don't think that he's correct. I think he's kind of deflecting blame for a lot of the problems that have been going on. Look, he's got plenty of money. He's not as bad as some of the other black community leaders like Sharpton and Jesse Jackson in that respect. Meaning he's not as corrupt in that respect as them, but he is corrupt. And I think he is more honest than them in his opinions. Saying what he really means. Some of these people are complete frauds. Al Sharpton is no less of a hater of Jews than Louis Farrakhan. The fact is that it gets papered over because he's an establishment figure. He appears on MSNBC, has his own show. He's a bigger fraud than Louis Farrakhan. So people think it's acceptable that Barack Obama sent Al Sharpton, a person who has said things that were much more anti-Jewish than Louis Farrakhan. He sent him to Ferguson in order to create that. What was it? To foster peace between the police and the protesters at the time. That was a matter that had nothing to do with the Jews, but Al Sharpton had incited riots before against Jews. Al Sharpton is a horrible figure to be connected in any way to a president. Jesse Jackson is also maybe not an inciter to riots, but he's a race baiter. He's a race hustler. And so all of these people that were in some way associated with Obama for years, especially Sharpton, and to a much lesser extent Louis Farrakhan. I don't know why Alan Dershowitz is playing coy right now, saying I can't believe that he was photographed with him in 2006 or whenever this was, 2005 apparently. Look, this is who Barack Obama is. He's never been a friend of anybody but Barack Obama and people like him. And those are the people that are more like him than you are, Alan Dershowitz. So stop with the false sense of shock. And another thing, he said, like it even mentions here that when Keith Ellison was running to be Democratic Party chair, the DNC chair, Alan Dershowitz claimed, well, if he gets elected DNC chair, I'm going to leave the Democratic Party. Well, so he didn't get elected chair, but he got appointed deputy chair. And Tom Perez is a wet noodle. He's pretty much an impotent weakling at the top. And Ellison also is really a figurehead. The real people controlling the Democratic Party have been proven to be the donors, and a number of people that they pretty much tell Tom Perez what to do. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and a large donor network. That's who really runs the Democratic Party. Tom Perez and Keith Ellison. There's nothing that they do that really that really guides the Democratic Party. They're really just they have about as much effect as the building janitor. And it's a joke. It's symbolic. Alan Dershowitz didn't want to be associated with a party that had as one of its primary faces somebody like Keith Ellison. But to be honest with you, Keith Ellison has just as much right as anybody else to be Democratic Party chair. Yes, he's a moron, which means that he's perfect to be chair of the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party is really a party of idiots. They don't have any ideas. They've failed to solve the problems of inner city Americans. They've failed to bring good jobs to them. They can't bring investment into this country. And Dershowitz takes this small issue, this real, it's not a small issue for him, because he focuses on meaningless crap, like the fact that Keith Ellison was associated with Louis Farrakhan. Fine. Louis Farrakhan, controversial guy. Okay, I don't care about that. I don't care about that because I'm not into this symbolic garbage. I'm into the fact that Keith Ellison is an idiot, and he's never done it. What bill has he proposed? He's been in Congress for, I think, over 10 years, and he hasn't proposed any bills that have really been, he's accomplished literally nothing, and he's been on public salary for years. Okay, now why is this important in any way? Well, it's just the irony, because these people, the Democrats and their media whores, have condemned Mr. Trump for, not condemning David Duke fast enough, not condemning Charlottesville the right way, not disassociating himself, not disavowing whatever. That's it's the irony. That's what's important here. The irony that these people they'll associate with Louis Farrakhan, who said racist things not just against Jewish people but against white people in general, and against he's not a very coexistency guy. He's all about we was kings. That's his thing. That's the problem with Louis Farrakhan, in truth. And so that's really why I think it's bullshit that Alan Dershowitz cares so much about this. Pinochet is really talking up a storm. Hi, Dean Kruger. Thank you for joining me, if you're still here. Catherine says, earlier you implied that the death of the Holocaust survivors means people are no longer affected, but people are still affected because they're growing up in families that have been affected. Okay, but the best way to deal with a tragedy is to move past it, and that's my opinion. And you can take it for what it's worth. Obviously, you have a different job than I do, but I happen to disagree. I think that we're going about this the wrong way. She also said 2016 taught me the Democrats are full of it. Dean Kruger, yeah, I was killed once. I got hit by a car when I was 15. Are you guys talking about Grand Theft Auto or something? Anyway, so last story for tonight. Also, sorry to tell you this, but this is kind of a Judeo-centric. Sorry, I have to put the parentheses up. This is hard to do because it's hard on the hands. So I have the parentheses up. So it's a Judeo-centric, stream. But John Kerry goes to the president of the Palestinian Authority, and he gives him like this tip. Hey, this Donald Trump, just forget about it, because I'm going to be running for president or something. And he says, ex-Secretary of State John Kerry has confided that he may make a second bid for the White House, as he urged Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas to resist President Trump, according to a report. Abbas should stay strong in his spirit and play for time, that he should not break down and not capitulate to Trump's demands, Kerry told an Abbas confidant, according to the Hebrew paper Mariv, which I used to read, by the way. Kerry also suggested that during his London confab with Hussein Agha, the Palestinian Authority president's close associate, that the PA formulate its own peace proposal, which actually is not a bad idea. Maybe it is time for the Palestinians to define their peace principles and present a positive plan, he said, adding that Abbas should show Trump that he will not break and will not yield to his demands. Kerry promised to use all his contacts and abilities to build support for a plan pitched by the Palestinians. So that's going to be a problem for him going forward. He asked Abbas through Agha not to attack the Trump administration, but to concentrate on personal attacks on Trump, who Kerry said was directly responsible for the stalled peace process. In the report about the conversation, Agha said Kerry appears to be crazy about things, very energetic, and eager to help realize the dream of peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Kerry said that even fellow Republicans do not know what to do with the erratic Trump, and that patience was needed to get through this turbulent period. According to the report, Kerry also used derogatory terms when referring to Trump. The 2004 Democratic presidential nominee has continued to meet with Agha, who served as an intermediary for Kerry and Abbas during Kerry's 4 years as top diplomat. Yes, this is really going to be a problem. Kerry also told the Lebanese scholar that Trump, whose administration is under investigation for possible collusion with Russia will likely not be in the White House much longer. If Trump survives his first term, the Massachusetts Democrat suggested he may seek to unseat him in 2020. Last September, Kerry refused to rule out the possibility of running in 2020, telling MSNBC that he did not have any plans right now to run for president. If elected, Kerry would be 77 on her inauguration day in 2021, making him the oldest president in U.S. history. The current record is held by Trump, who was 70 when he was sworn in last year. Aga is a senior associate member of St. Antony's College, Oxford, and co-author of A Framework for a Palestinian National Security Doctrine. He maintains an extensive network of contacts with many influential Israelis. Aga declined to respond to the report. The Israeli paper could not reach Kerry for comment. So, it's a good question. How much of that is true or not true? There's not, like, I don't think everybody would believe that type of source. Okay. The real problem I see here is that if this meeting did occur, and if this is really like some sort of a pipeline that John Kerry has to Mahmoud Abbas, the question then becomes, does he do this often, and does he do it with other officials of the Abbas government? And then you get to the issue of whether this violates the Logan Act. Now, let me pull up some more info because I guess I forgot to do this. Before, but the Logan Act is a United States federal law that criminalizes negotiation by unauthorized persons with foreign governments having a dispute with the United States. The intent behind the act is to prevent unauthorized negotiations from undermining the government's positions. The act was passed following George Logan's unauthorized negotiations with France in 1798 and was signed into law by President John Adams on January 30th, 1799. The act was last amended in 1994, changing the penalty for violation from fined $5,000 to fined under this title. This appears to be the only amendment to the act. Violation of the Logan Act is a felony. Only 2 people have ever been indicted for violating the act's provisions. However, no person has ever been convicted of violating the act. Could he be convicted of it? I don't know. It would be kind of an issue there. So John Sparkman and George McGovern were accused of it. Jonas Phillips Levy became the second and to this day last person to be indicted under the Logan Act. Levy, an American merchant and sailor, was living in Mexico at the time and acquired a grant to build a railway across the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, the nearest point across Mexico. That's kind of towards the south. Secretary of State Daniel Webster had been pressuring Mexico to accept a treaty that would allow a different group of American businessmen to build a railway. Levy wrote a letter to Mexican President Mariano Arista, urging him to reject Webster's proposed treaty, prompting Webster to seek an indictment against Levy for violating the Logan Act. Federal prosecutors were forced to dismiss the case after Arista refused to hand over the original copy of the letter, depriving them of the evidence they needed to convict Levy. And then earlier there was a guy from Kentucky, Francis Flournoy, who advocated for the separation of the Western U.S. and an alliance with France. The United States attorney so this was like in 1803. So John Kerry, I think actually does violate the spirit of the Logan Act. Now, I like this Hussein Agha guy. I don't know how official of a capacity he has, but if it's proven that he was actually meeting with other officials that are directly connected with the Abbas government of the Palestinian Authority, there could be an argument that he violated the Logan Act. Now, it's never been prosecuted successfully, so I don't know if, I'm not going to be like these idiots, like the actual law professor, Lawrence Tribe, that's tried to say, well, if Trump's impeached, perhaps Hillary could be replacing him as president, because then he would resign, and then Mike Pence would be impeached too. So you have to do 2 impeachments when there's never even been and impeachment and conviction. People forget that, impeachment does not mean removal from office. Only conviction by the Senate would mean removal from office, and then he has to stand trial. So then you would have to do that for both Trump and Mike Pence, and then Paul Ryan would have to resign as president, and then according to them, Hillary Clinton would become president. No, that's not how it works at all. In fact, that's actually almost like these people that I know that have they've tried to say that sometimes we'll make up shit at work about flat Earth to mess with this one guy that works with us. It's kind of this is like real Marvel universe type of shit that they're talking about. No, I don't know if he could be prosecuted on the Logan Act, but this is as good a case of any. More stories from Pinochet. I got released from juvenile hall and was arrested 45 minutes later for shoplifting across the street. Well, good for you. Okay, so look, concerning Alan Dershowitz, yeah, I think he's full of shit. Concerning John Kerry, I think he's full of shit. So I've talked about 4 people today that I think are completely, they have no integrity. There's Angela Merkel, there's a Steve Goldstein guy from the Anne Frank Center, there's Alan Dershowitz, and then there's John Kerry. And John Kerry, by the way, is one of the, look, when I think I voted the first time in 2012, and that was a mistake, voting for Mitt Romney. The reason I didn't vote in 2000 and 2004 and 2008, when I had well, actually, I couldn't have voted in 2000 because I think I was only 16. But no, I was like 15. In any case, so I wasn't going to vote for George Bush or Al Gore. I probably would have voted for Ralph Nader. Then in 2004, yeah, John Kerry, basically he was like pig vomit from the Howard Stern movie, Private Parts. This loser gets up in front of the camera, says, reporting for duty. No, wasn't going to vote for him, have zero interest in anything he says. As Secretary of State, this is a guy whose communications were tapped by Russia. And the result of that was probably Vladimir Putin putting together a mixtape so he could listen in his office while typing up, whatever communications he has and laughing. It's kind of like how other people put together like a comedy podcast. Well, Vladimir Putin probably has just tapes of John Kerry talking about, tomorrow I think I might make peace between cats and dogs or something. Yeah, the guy was a fuck up of epic proportions in the State Department. There's allegations that he violated its ethics rules by having his daughter's NGO get a contract with it. No, John Kerry is an idiot. And the fact that anybody from any country, whether it's the Palestinians or Germany, whatever it is, listens to the guy, that's on them. That means that they're also an idiot. Think about that. The guy accomplished literally nothing. In fact, you could probably say that John Kerry was worse as Secretary of State than Hillary Clinton was, because Hillary Clinton got a few breakthroughs with economic relations with Asia. Let's give that to her. That's about it. Under Kerry, I'm not sure exactly what he accomplished. Barack Obama, he did help broker a peace treaty in Colombia, which is kind of falling apart now. There was the whole thaw with Cuba, which was wrong. We could have just removed the sanctions and not had an embassy there. What do we need an embassy in Cuba for? They're full of shit. They're a country that's basically a dictatorship that has nothing worth interacting for. Thanks, J-Man, for logging on. Dean Kruger says, I think John Kerry should run. That would be fun to watch. LOL, Maxine Waters would be his VP. I'd say I would support in the primary, John Kerry, and then you would have Keith Ellison as his vice president, and then you would have sort of this, this United Nations of loser. It'd be that the whole ticket. You would just see them, doing this the whole time, and they're really pathetic people. When you think the entire Democratic Party is pathetic. They're the only party that's managed to be worse than the Republicans. That's how bad our two-party system is. That they're two awful parties for dramatically different reasons. Well, some of the same reasons. Some of the, I mean, they do take money from the same lobbyists. That's about it for today. Thanks, Pinochet, for all of the stories, and Catherine, also for your disagreeing opinion, but I still disagree with you. And for everybody else that tuned in, I don't know if there's going to be any more live streams tomorrow. I have no interviews planned at the moment, but stick around and let me know what you think. Comments in the description. Do look at my blog post. Have a good night.